Take it away.
All right. So I've been doing a few Zoom classes since this whole thing happened, and I still feel absolutely insane staring at myself, talking for however long. So I'm going to do the best I can to teach this class via Zoom and not make it weird. but you know, it's a new age. I have been teaching this class for many years, so I always said I could teach it blindfold with both hands tied behind my back, which I sort of feel like I'm doing right now, not seeing you all. But I do appreciate your questions. I will probably get to many of the answers as we move along, but do feel free to ask questions. And I'm going to just tell you how I'm going to format this right now. We will take a break. You obviously can get up and walk around or use the restroom or whatever you need to do, but we're just going to take a couple-minute break in about an hour for me to do the same thing. So it'll just be a 5-minute break, and I'll let Katie know when that's going to be, or I'll let you all know when that's going to be. Basically, nature will dictate that. But anyway, so I'm going to tell a little tiny bit of my story before we jump right into this. 21, almost 22 years ago, I had first stage ovarian cancer and a tumor about this size. And I was 29. I did not need chemo or radiation, but I did have pretty major surgery and developed lymphedema in my right leg after that. They removed several lymph nodes, and I was a massage therapist and a midwife at the time. So I knew a lot about my body and medicine. I did not, however, know much about the lymph system, and I didn't know how to navigate that. So, you know, nature, or, you know, I had no choice but to learn how to figure this out. There was not anyone practicing lymphatic drainage in this area, or anyone in my circle or my extended circle. So I started researching this, and I learned a whole lot about the lymph system, and I also learned a whole lot about the digestive system. And so I sort of combine those two. I also have a daughter with a connective tissue disorder called Ehlers-Danlos, and part of what that disorder does is it causes an extreme amount of digestive issues. The organs sort of slip around, the collagen is faulty, things are too stretchy. So I was forced to also learn a lot about that system and how to work with the digestive system. So I combine those two systems, the lymph system and the digestive system, when I do my hands-on work and when I teach folks how to do this at home. So for about 18 years, I've been working with cancer patients. I've been working with the lymph system and, like I said, the digestive system. So what I plan to teach you all today is we're going over a basic anatomy review of the lymph system, which, you know, when I teach these classes to practitioners, I'll have nurses, I'll have PTs, I'll have folks in my trainings that you would think would know about the lymph system, but this really isn't taught very often, very frequently in most schools. So I don't expect that most of you will know a lot about it. Forgive me if I'm teaching on a really basic level. So if you do know a little bit more, you know, just, I promise it'll pick up a little bit, but I am going to start with really basic information, and we'll use some visuals. I'll share my screen here in a few, and we'll go over that. So my plan is to go over some of the anatomy and explain to you why we would want to be working with the lymph system. And then before we finish today, I'll teach you how to individually work your throat, which is where your main drains are. We'll do the armpits, a little bit of the abdomen, and I'll show you just, I think this is a pretty, there's only us, it's a pretty private meeting. I think I can show some breast stuff. I'm gonna field this to you, Katie. Shall I do a little bit of breast stuff since this is a closed meeting and it's private and there won't be any
we are currently recording, and so maybe we could do the breast part at the end.
Okay, all right, let's do it then. Good.
I need to admit somebody, so I'm not exactly sure. So let's admit her.
Okay, so we'll do what Katie said, and so at the end, obviously I don't know who's here and what your status is. usually in these groups, we have at least 1 or 2 people who have had breast issues and are interested in the breast lymphatic drainage. And even if you haven't, it's great information to have if you have or have ever had breasts or know anyone who does. So we'll do that at the end. I would like to start by opening up a program that I have. And this is where we'll share our screen. I think what's going to happen is I'll disappear for a minute when I share my screen. And it's an anatomy program that's interactive. So I'm going to open that up and I'm going to scroll up over the skeleton. And the things I want you to note, which I'll point out while I'm moving through this, you'll see that the yellow on the skeleton is the nervous system. The green is the lymph system. And so I'll enlarge this and reduce it as we move through this visual. But notice as we're looking at this, how close the nerves and the lymph are. So there's this amazing osteopathic surgeon back at the end of the 1800s. Chapman was his name, and he discovered these neurolymphatic pathways. So you've got a nerve and you've got a lymph vessel. So if your lymphatic vessel starts to fill with excess fluid and put pressure on the nerve, that nerve's going to be like a wet or ice-covered telephone wire. So lymphatic congestion and extra fluid in your tissues or enlarged vessels can cause a neurological response, meaning obviously pain or weird neurological twinges and issues that we'll have. I know post-surgically I had abdominal surgery, but I'd have pain in my leg or way up in the side of my body. And so we'll feel these distal pains. And a nerve goes from your spine all the way, it's not this long, it's the whole body. So some of these neurolymphatic pathways that are affected by the lymph, you might notice when we're looking at these visuals that I'm going to show you. The other thing that I'm hoping will pop up on that when I get to it is the secondary lymphatic organs. So the lymph system consists of millions and millions of lymphatic vessels, and it's similar to the circulatory system, except the circulatory system is in a circle, veins to arteries, arteries to veins to arteries, like it's a whole circle constantly. The lymph system is a one-way system. So right under the skin, right under the epidermis is like it's like a sea anemone. And it's got the little floating capillaries, tiny little capillaries, and they're just floating in the extracellular fluid right under our skin. So we've got these floating lymph vessels, tiny capillaries that then move to larger vessels that move to large vessels and so on, much like a tiny little creek in the mountain flows down to a river that flows down to a larger river that flows to the sea. So this is the same thing that's happening in our lymphatic system. So the lymph system is pulling fluid out of the tissues, drawing it through these tiny little floating capillaries into larger vessels, and on its pathway, it's going to stop in lymph nodes. So the average person has 400 to 700 lymph nodes in their body, which you'll see on these visuals that I'm showing you. They're, I'll point them out as well. They're green balls in the lymph system. So those are little cleaning factories. So this fluid, this lymphatic fluid that's moving through your body is going to stop at a lymph node, and it's going to swirl around in there. It's going to come in through a one-way vessel that's going to go into a circular oval-shaped lymph node. The fluid's going to swirl around in there, and then it's going to leave by way of 1 or 2 vessels. And when we do this work later, I'll remind you of this, but whenever we're touching that and whenever we're doing hands-on work, we want to make sure we're not collapsing that area, or obviously the fluid can't get out. And I'll show you what I mean by that. But the fluid then leaves that lymph node, moves down the chain and goes into another lymph node, leaves that lymph node, moves down the chain to another one, and so on, all the way through the system. And each lymph node is cleaning the fluid more until it reaches your main drains up behind your bones and your up in your throat here. That fluid then enters the heart and becomes the watery part of our blood. And it continues to cycle through and become blood and become interstitial fluid and then become lymph again. So it's really fantastic, amazing system, but we never really are taught much about this. So it's very misunderstood. If your lymph system stopped working today, you would be dead by Friday. It's vital, and so it's really something, especially right now. And the reason I was excited about doing this class right now is that fluid is also a huge part of our lymphatics, our immune system. That fluid is where lymphocytes are maturing and where they're produced, and whenever we're introduced, a pathogen is introduced to our body, it's the lymph system that's responding. It's the spleen, it's the bone marrow, it's all of these secondary organs jump into play when something like, a virus enters our body. So, far be it for me to say that this can help us all prevent viruses, but it can help boost our immune system in a way that our body is ready to fight whatever comes in. It's like if we look at our lymph system in the way that we look at the rest of the water in the world, we're trying to make it more like a free-flowing river, which is what this hands-on work does, and keep that fluid moving at a nice steady pace and make it through as many lymph nodes as it can make it through. We don't want it to look like a pond and be stagnant. We want those body waters to move like a river. So I'm going to go ahead and before I open the program I want to show you with the images of the lymph, are there any questions right now? Okay.
Kimby, we had one question, which
Okay.
I think you kind of covered a little bit. Somebody says that she's not able to make a fist without pain, and now is turning into like some sort of trigger finger. She's currently on anastrozole, but she was wondering if it's maybe has to do with her lymphatic system. It sounds like it's on the same arm that she has lymph node removal.
Okay, so yeah, it definitely could. The way the pathway, the way that the fluid is moving is from the fingertips, and it sounds counterintuitive. People seem to think it moves away, but it's moving from the fingertips through the hand, and there's millions of vessels. We're moving through the hand and up into this area here, and I'll show you. The person who asked this question, take specific note when or anyone with breast surgery, I'll show you the elbow nodes in our arms. So we don't have a bunch of lymph nodes everywhere. We have vessels. So it's like a chain of pearls. So you've got this long strand part, and we've got lymph nodes in the armpit area or the elbow area, and then up in the armpit area. So by the end of this, you will know how to drain your armpits into your main drains, and I'll make sure I show you how to do the elbow as well. And then one of the things I'm going to show you all at the end is how to dry brush, which in the case of hand pain, arm pain as a result of breast surgery, you'll want to start at the end of your fingertips and move all the way down. And I will go over that. But that's the long answer. The short answer is yes, it can have to do with your lymph system. It can also unfortunately be a neurological from a source other than the lymph putting pressure on it, neurological from surgery perhaps. And trigger finger is a little different. Usually not, the trigger finger is usually not lymph. I wish it was that easy. Okay, so I have never shared my screen. So we're gonna see if I can do this. I'm learning a lot lately about how valuable it is to have teenagers to teach me how to do all this stuff, because my daughter taught me Zoom. So I'm going to share my screen and go try to find my program to open. Look at that. Let's see if I can do this. Maybe not. Okay. I'm going to go back. Oh, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. All right. So obviously this is a skeleton. And I'm going to turn the lymph on. So we're going to zoom in here and just start by looking at the lymph. The lymph is green. Do you guys need that larger, or is it okay? All right, so this is lymph here. These little lymph nodes here, this is the pelvis, this is the pubic bone. So this is the suprapubic lymph node here. And when women are having their menses, this usually gets huge. Same with pregnancy and menopause. We're gonna move right up the body. So just, you're looking at the green, and obviously this is just the tiniest bit of vessels. We have millions. This is a very basic overview. These guys in here are critical. These are draining our legs, all the lymphatic fluid in the legs, all the lymphatic fluid in the pelvic organs, all the lymphatic, that includes the bladder, the bowel, the colon. That's all draining into these lymph nodes and vessels here. It then makes its way up to the largest vessels in the body, which are these that are running up in front of the spine, and continues up to its terminus at the neck. But here's where I want you to look at the elbow. So we've got several lymph nodes here in the elbow. And there we go. So these guys here would be the ones that you would want to spend time working on and focus on with hand stuff. So we'll see right there on the inner part of the elbow. I'm going to continue scrolling up the body. And just imagine these little green vessels times millions. This is your spleen right here. This red organ right here on the side near the back. That is your spleen. It is a secondary lymphatic organ. It has a lot to do with blood storage and lymphatic storage. These are the armpit lymph nodes here. So when a person has, say, a mastectomy, or a person has lung cancer, oftentimes they'll take several of these lymph nodes in the armpit. They'll take one sentinel node, and what that means is the sentinel node is like the guardian. It's the one that would first see the cancer coming from the breast. So I'm actually gonna change the gender here. So the breast would have, if cancer was moving from a breast into the armpit, it would come to one of these nodes right here. So that would be the sentinel node that would be removed. But see, you can see right up in here, these are the nodes that would be removed in breast surgery. So we're coming up to the neck. And see how much larger these lymphatic vessels are right through here? These are really important. These are the main ones we'll all know work by the end of today. And what I mean by work is opening and closing the valves in these vessels and getting the fluid to move through it at a much faster pace. This fluid comes up the body and drops into the heart back here. So we've got these vessels are the ones that are considered the terminus. And look at how many we have on the neck. Most people have about 100 lymph vessels in their neck. Pretty cool. This little guy right here, down here in the chest, behind the sternum, that's your thymus. And after folks are about 30 years old, it shrinks down considerably. And I might as well just do this part of it right now. I always teach people to do tapping. Many of you have probably heard of tapping. So notice where this is. It's right under your second rib. So when we do tapping, we're stimulating this little guy right here, this thymus right here, to just sort of activate a little bit more. And it's gentle tapping on your sternum. Obviously, you're not going to want to do that if you've had recent surgery, but I do it daily. So take a look here at these vessels, these lymphatic vessels, and notice as I turn her around, there's not much going on in the back. There's vessels, but there's not much going on as far as nodes go. Most of our nodes are in the front of the body. So our focus is going to be on the front of the body. I'm going to add here now, we are going to add your thyroid. There's your thyroid right here. We're also going to talk about how to work the thyroid. And if you're on thyroid medication, you're going to want to do very, very little today as I show you, because it can the thyroid medication can build up around the thyroid. And then once we start working on it, it can release that into your system and make you all wacky. So if you're on thyroid medication, go super easy with yourself and just do a couple minutes of it. So what I want to add now is the nerves. So these yellow guys here are the nerves. And I'm just going to move her around a little bit. Her mouth is closed. I wish it was open because you could see the tonsils and adenoids in there. So we're going to zoom in to this area on the neck. So this right here is an area called the Waterwheel, and they call it the Waterwheel in the lymph world because once the fluid leaves your face and back of your head, it's going to move down this way, down the chin, come on, follow these vessels up into this area. From the head, it comes down to this area, and then the fluid's all swirling around in here. But look at how close it is to all of these nerves. And look at imagine if this was all swollen from, say, allergies. People talk all the time post-surgically. They're fine for a while, they'll have a surgery, and then all of a sudden, allergies, or they get sick with something else, and all of this pain throughout their body. Well, this is putting pressure on these nerves that are running all the way down the arm, or all the way down the chest, or all the way down the leg. So we're going to scroll back down the body, just looking a little bit at the nerves, especially here in the armpit area. These guys are touching without even being swollen, without having extra fluid in there. They're already touching. So what the osteopath that I was describing discovered is how much the lymph system actually is affecting the nerves. These lymph nodes and lymphatic vessels in the armpits, right on the nerves. They're already sitting on it. Same thing with deep in the chest cavity. We're just going to scroll down a little bit more. Sorry, this program doesn't move very fast, so the scrolling is a little slow. I just want to take you back down to the belly. So oddly enough, well, we all know that our bodies are very different. We're not all the same. So 20% of the population does not have this little guy right here. This little green thing right here, that is called the cisterna chyli, and it's a reservoir for lymph, and it's right on the front of your spine. So this lymphatic vessel, the thoracic duct, I hope you all can see my cursor. I wish my cursor could be bright yellow, but this guy right here runs from way down all the way up to the neck, and that's your thoracic duct, largest lymphatic vessel in the body. But right here is your cisterna chyli. Lymphatic reservoir. These are your adrenal glands here. They are in the back. We're looking through the body. You know, when we have lymphatic congestion, fatigue is one of the main diagnostic criteria. It's one of the main side effects of having congested lymph is our adrenal glands are dramatically affected right back there. So just take a look here at how many lymph nodes we have deep in the belly. We're going to continue scrolling down a little bit. Back into the pelvis, and look at the nerves. I mean, no wonder we have such strange signals in our body sometimes, especially post-surgically. So in the pelvic bowl, look in here in the pelvic bowl, we have so many deep nerves. And I don't know about you all, but there's times where there's like a weird, strange, deep twinge that you can't describe at all. Look how huge these nerves are. There are some nerves. This guy right here is the size of your thumb. Your sciatic nerve is the size of your thumb. In fact, I'm going to zoom out a little bit since I know a lot of us have some back issues, especially post-surgery. Look here in the hand. So when you talk about, or excuse me, the arm, when you talk about pain in the hand, these nerves right here, the ulnar nerve, is coming right down past all of this lymph right here. So if this lymph is full and putting pressure on these nerves, then those nerves don't stop there. They go all the way down. So if there's pressure here, there's going to be nerve compromise all the way down. So looking at the pelvis, this here's your sciatic nerve right here. Huge. So it comes out of this area right here. It's called the cauda equina, which means horse's tail in Latin. And they call it that because there's just a bunch of different nerves that come out like a horse's tail. So when we have pain that comes from our lower back, which you have surgery, you lay around for a little while, or you have chemo, or you have radiation, or whatever your situation can be, you end up with pain down your leg, you end up with back pain. The combination of the nerve and the lymph can be extremely connected. Lymph vessels right through here. We're going to keep scrolling and take a look at the back of the knee. So I have a Baker cyst, and they're very, very common. I have so many massage clients with Baker cysts. Cysts behind your knee, probably arthritis, some synovial fluid that leaks out. But what happens for me, because my right leg gets full of lymph from my surgery, my Baker cyst will put pressure on these lymph nodes here, and bam, my whole leg swells. Because check that out. It's awesome. It's so fascinating. I wish we were taught this in kindergarten. So I'm going to turn her around. We're going to go back up. So I really wanted you to understand the connection between the nerves and pain, physical pain that you're feeling in your body, and how it can be affected by a full lymph system. So let's get this turned around. And now I'm going to add one more thing for us. I am going to add cardiovascular. So let's get zoomed up to her.
Kimby,
Yeah.
I got a question.
Yes, what's your question?
So, should we assume that any cancer diagnosis that has lymphoma in it indicates it's manifested in the lymph system?
Yes, ma'am, we certainly should. Lymphoma is manifested in the lymph system, yes. So it could potentially only be in the lymph system. In fact, it usually is only in the lymph system. There are some blood cancers and it can get into the bloodstream, but lymphoma in and of itself is usually just in the lymph system. So check out the veins and arteries compared to the lymph system. So they're cousins. The lymph system and the circulatory system are maybe siblings is a better way to put it. They're actually entwined. But the lymph system, remember, is like a sea anemone, and it's a one-way system. The fluid's just going straight into the heart. Right about here, and this is the subclavian vein, both sides. And so these lymphatic vessels are coming down in here and dropping in around this area. But they're all touching. So again, my right leg, where I have lymphedema, has a huge varicose vein. It's uncomfortable. I knew it was going to happen because that's just what happens when our lymph system is compromised. So we can see the connection between the lymph system and the vascular system. I'm going to scroll down the body just so you can see a little bit more of that. And you know, it's funny, this is a great program, but even this program barely touches on the lymph system. It's just such an understudied, focused on system. That's the heart in there, in the rib cage. It's just a system that we just don't talk about, which is completely strange to me. So we're moving down the body.
Kimby,
Yeah.
since you just kind of said that, do you think that's partly why like all physicians have like a different opinion on what potentially could cause lymphedema and not, just because it's so understudied? Or
You know, so I do have a story to tell about that, which I think, Katie, you have heard. I'm going to go ahead and close this down and come back into our regular screen unless anybody has a question or wants to see something else through here.
I'm watching for any
Yeah, me too.
chats, but I haven't seen it.
Okay, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and close that down. Last look at the way that the nerves, the blood, and the lymph move together. I'm going to hit stop share, and hopefully I just pop back up on the big screen. Yes, look at that. Oh, I shared for the first time. I feel like I just learned something really cool. Back to your question. I think that I've talked to so many doctors about this, and especially in the beginning when I was first learning this, I really reached out to a community of, I mean, I had a lot of training in this, but I reached out to communities of doctors, spoke to my friends who were doctors, and honestly, people just don't, many doctors said to me, that's not what I do. That's, I do surgery, or I just don't work on the lymph system. I just don't know much about it. Or they honestly, my buddy's in, he's just finished med school at the biggest hospital in New York. He's a surgeon, and he used to call me with questions about the lymph system all the time because he got one term of lymphatic training, one term in his entire medical school career. And has an extreme interest in it. So he's seeking out additional information, but one term. So they just don't have a bunch of information. Although I have a client, and I had a client, and she had a mastectomy on her right breast and was not sent to me until she had developed lymphedema. So she had this mastectomy, time passed, her hands started swelling, her arms started swelling. Her doctor said, you should go see this person. She came to see me, and we worked on it, and it's an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. So preventing it is much easier to deal with. But regardless, we worked on it, and she got to a place that was stable, and I saw her very irregularly after that, just for maintenance. Her sister, her biological sister, got the exact same cancer, and she lived in London. So my client flies to London to be there at the surgery with her sister, same surgery she had a few years earlier. And the sister has the mastectomy and wakes up in recovery with a lymphatic therapist at her side before she even left to go to the main hospital room. They said, we're gonna teach you how to do lymphatic drainage. You're gonna have to do this every day for the rest of your life. And this is outside of London. They teach this to cancer patients, mastectomy, people who've had mastectomies, or even lumpectomies where there's lymph node removal. And they teach it the first hour, and you're expected to learn it and do it every day. So it's treated a little bit differently in other countries. I think prominently the main school of training that I went through, the doctor was a doctor in France, and his colleague was in Germany, and they brought this to America. So I think that in other places it's treated differently, and they know a little bit more about it. And we're learning. Some of you may know this, but this was appalling to me that as recently as 10 years ago, lymphedema as a direct result of a mastectomy was not considered a medical condition and therefore not covered by insurance. It was not so very long ago. So we are just opening doors in this country to how to really work with the lymph system. So any questions at this point? Okay. I'll tell you more about what the lymph system is actually doing and what it's about. So it's 90% water, and as we age, we become less water. That's where wrinkles come from, and our bodies just become drier as we age. So children have more water. Their lymph systems are faster moving. They are more plentiful in the extracellular fluid in their body. So as we age, that decreases a little bit, which in my opinion means as we age, we need to be doing this more and more. I honestly do lymphatic drainage on myself most days a little bit, partially because I'm compromised and partially because I'm in my 50s and I know that I ought to be. That said, it consists of water and antibodies, and lymph cells, a little bit of protein is in our lymph system. But what its job is not just to remove toxins from our body, but to remove dead cells and cellular debris. So cells don't just float around and leave nothing behind. They do have debris, and that debris is picked up by the lymph system, and it's filtered through, and the fluid moves through a lymph node where it destroys that waste from our cells. When a cell dies, it's destroyed by the lymph system and eaten by other cells and dispersed through body gases, urine, out through the skin and through the lungs and all of the other means of elimination in our body. And so the lymph system is taking care of us even when we're at our healthiest. It's busy. It's also moving hormones and chemicals through our body. And some of the hormones that it's especially responsible for moving are the feel-good hormones, serotonin, melatonin. Many studies have been done on people with anxiety, sleep disorders, and just the feeling of unrest. And a lot of that has to do with those hormones not moving through our bodies, those chemicals being stuck. So we increase the lymphatic flow and we increase the availability of those hormones. And we're not just increasing lymphatic flow by hands-on work. Exercise can do that, which I will talk about that in a minute too. So it's moving hormones, it's taking waste and delivering it to places that it can be removed from the body. One cool little factoid, I love to throw in little cool factoids. If it was possible to not die while you were sleeping with a plastic bag over your head, you would end up exhaling over the course of a night about a pint of liquid. So we literally are exhaling, especially people who are sleeping with their mouths open. We exhale gas and we exhale liquid, little tiny bits of liquid through our mouth. And that is usually containing things we don't want in the body. So it's a way of eliminating some of the waste that we have, especially in our upper body. Our tonsils and adenoids are secondary lymphatic organs. People who had their tonsils removed, I was born in 1968, and the statistic says that 72% of children born in that year had their tonsils and or adenoids removed. It was common to just remove them when we were 4 or 5 and had tonsillitis. It is now very discouraged. Most doctors don't want to have anything to do with removing tonsils and adenoids because they're a secondary lymphatic organ, and they are actually the first line of defense against food allergies. If you were to eat a food that your body is sensitive to, your tonsils would swell within a couple of minutes of ingesting that food. You can shine a flashlight down your throat and see if your tonsils swell to find out if you're allergic to whatever, shellfish, if you're willing to take that risk. So those are part of our system. They're a very active part of the lymphatic system. So is our appendix. The appendix in human beings used to be a lot bigger. Now most people's appendix is a tiny little thing. It used to be good size. And it's thought that it was much more active when we did not have refrigeration. And perhaps it was more active in working with parasites and eliminating parasites from that part of the body. And speaking of the appendix, I'm going to teach you how to work that area, which is the ileocecal valve area. And it's a critical part of the digestive system and the lymphatics of the abdomen. So we've got a lymph system that's main jobs, they're probably quite equal, is elimination and distribution of hormones. When you're taking medication, be that chemo, pain medication, any kind of medication, hormones, it is also the lymphatic system's job to distribute that through the body. So I am going to have a little disclaimer here. I had thankfully this man was, had become a friend of mine. He was a client, and he was taking morphine post-surgery, and he had reduced his morphine dramatically, but he was on my table. I was doing lymphatic drainage on him, and it was working really well on the areas that needed it. And so I kind of went a little longer than usual, and it released so much morphine that had been stored up in his tissues. He could not drive home and had to have his wife come and pick him up. So I learned then that they say that pain medications can be stored, and even like lidocaine or carbocaine or whatever dentists use, for about 3 months. You can have those stored up in your tissues. So I advise against doing a lot of lymph drainage if you've been taking pain medication for a very long time, or if you're taking a large amount of it at a certain amount of time, even if it's just for a few days, just to kind of ease into it. Do a little bit of lymph drainage over time rather than a whole bunch at once, so that you're not dumping a bunch of morphine into your system and preventing yourself from being able to drive home. I also learned that with dental patients. I have worked on people who I'll drain the spot I showed you back here where I said all of this drains to. I'll drain that, and someone's side of their face will go numb again, because it releases all of the whatever, the lidocaine in there that's left in their tissue cells. So go easy on yourself. You're the one that knows what medications you're on. You're not going to do anything to hurt yourself. Nothing I'm going to show you is going to hurt. It's not going to hurt you. You could do it, and all of a sudden some of the pain meds release out of your tissues and into your bloodstream, and you're not going to, it's just going to maybe make you feel crummy for a bit, like you took too much pain meds, but nothing you're going to learn here and nothing you're going to do to yourself is going to hurt you. Even if I teach you the direction of how to do this and you do it the complete opposite, you're not going to hurt yourself. You're just not going to help yourself if you do it wrong. So, Katie, did you send them the pictures to make notes on?
Yes, we did.
Good.
They should have been able to print them out. We sent them a couple times in advance, a couple days in advance.
Did you send a face and a body?
Yes.
Okay. So if you have those packets, you may want to grab them now. Any questions? We all doing okay? Okay.
We do have one question. Will prior chemo of years before be stirred up in the lymph drainage when you're doing the lymph drainage?
So there's a lot of factors. That's a great question. Thank you. There's a lot of contributing factors to that. And, you know, if I had to say yes or no, I'd say no, but there's a couple contributing factors. So it depends a little bit on how much body fat you have. And I didn't realize I gained 30 pounds after an accident recently, and my lymph system was clearly showed me that I gained this 30 pounds. And the reason being is that we have this vast highway, this network of these lymph vessels everywhere except in fat. So in the areas that have fat, we have less lymphatic flow. So a person who has more body weight on them is going to store, potentially, it's not an absolute, but they're potentially going to store toxins, and when I say toxins, that's cellular debris, medications, chemo, and anything else that's in the body. They're going to store that in fat where there's not as many lymph vessels. So if you have a lot of chemo, or excuse me, fat cells in your body, then perhaps a little bit of old chemo would still be stored in there, but better out than in. I mean, it's not going to release enough that's going to be damaging to you. It's already in there. It's just whether it's going to be living in fat or whether your body's going to be processing it and moving it through. And again, if you do fall into that category where you had a whole lot of chemo in the past, you want to go slow. And yeah, there's also a couple different schools of practice with working during chemo. I will work on people while they're actively having chemo. I've been doing this for 2 decades. Somebody who's not as familiar with what the body's, how it's responding, may feel a little less comfortable working during active chemo. However, I think part of the reason I teach this and why it's so important to me to teach this class is that this is our body. No one knows it better than you. Like even if I have been doing this for 2 decades and I'm doing lymph drainage on you, yeah, I can feel what's happening to the tissue. Yeah, I can feel if it's softening. I can maybe even take a measuring tape and measure your arm and then do some work and measure it again. And we have evidence that it's moving fluid. That's all true, but you're the judge of how it's actually making your body feel. And so what I say to people and what I really hope you take away from this is that part of learning this is taking your health care and your body into your own hands. This is something you can do every day that literally no one else can do for you every day. I'm not going to follow you around even if you are my client and do this every single day. Your partner's not going to do this. Your kids, your best friend. This is something that we can do for ourselves every day or every other day, or just make it a really big part of our life, and a really noticeable difference can take place if we do this. So this is a way to take your health into your hands and take, have some ownership of your body. And so you're not going to do anything that's going to hurt you, and you're going to know if you're releasing toxins into your body. And the way you're going to know is you're going to get a headache, or your urine or your poop or your sweat is going to just smell terrible. I have people that have called me and been like, my pee smells like I ate asparagus. That's a dramatic example because it probably won't be that bad, but you'll get super gassy. And these things are signs that we're getting rid of stuff our body doesn't want. And so your body's going to give you those signs. And then maybe you just slow down and you do lymph drainage once a week for a while, or once every 3 days, or whatever. You're going to be the judge of that. And you just need to trust that you're going to figure out your body and add this into your regimen of ways to help yourself.
So even if somebody does not have any problems with lymphedema, you highly encourage this to be just a daily practice or a weekly practice.
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. Because we're living in a toxic world, as is evident. I'm coming to you live on Zoom because I'm trapped in my tiny house. This is evidence that we're living in a toxic world. And so yes, 100%, Katie. Absolutely. Even if you don't have lymph issues, this is a great way to prevent your lymph system from getting stagnant. And the thing is that we want our body waters to be like a nice clean river and not like a pond. And it's incredible. After my, second or third training, we were required to watch a video, and there was a fresh cadaver, fresh. She had just passed away, and they injected into her toe green dye, fluorescent green dye. And then they literally milked it through her body. They literally rubbed this through her entire body, starting at her toes, and then kneaded it into her gut. And this took hours. I think it was a 9-hour process of slowly kneading this green dye through this fresh donor's body. And then they opened her up and looked at where all of the dye was. It was amazing. There was nothing that was not green. They had us watch this to prove how vast the lymph system is and how it's everywhere, literally everywhere. You had to get up so close to see anything other than the fluorescent green, because our body is so full of lymphatic vessels, tiny little vessels. And the system moves, I did not mention this earlier. So the system, I'm sure by now in our lives, we've all seen an IV bag dripping, just slowly dripping. Your lymph system is a whole lot more like that than a faucet. So we are moving 5 to 7 liters of fluid through, lymphatic fluid is moving through the body in a 24-hour period. So it's not rushing through. These are, the capillaries are microscopic. So these are tiny little capillaries pulling this fluid in and then moving it through the system. So 5 to 7 liters. Now, if you're on the older side, if you're on the just finished surgery, I'm on a bunch of medications, I don't get any exercise side, you might be moving only 4 liters of fluid through your body. You do this lymphatic drainage and you get some exercise, we can increase, by doing this hands-on lymph drainage, we can increase the amount of lymph fluid that's moving through the system to 7, 8, 10 liters in a day. So what that means is that we've got this lymphatic fluid that's in our body that is going to move eventually. So we're speeding up that process so that it gets through these lymph nodes, gets cleaner, gets moved on to the next lymph node, gets cleaned, and so on and so forth. Questions? Okay. So these little vessels, these capillaries, these little sea urchin capillaries that are moving through, they're gathering up the lymphatic fluid, are the fluid that they're gathering is extracellular fluid that's floating around outside of these vessels. So imagine the imagery I like to use with this is that there's a bathtub out in the forest, and I realize that this is a stretch, but work with me. There's a bathtub, big clawfoot bathtub, and it's out in the forest. There's trees and animals and foresty things around. So that bathtub is full of water, and it fills with water from the rain and from the environment. And at one point that water was all clean, but the longer that water sits in the bathtub, the dirtier it gets. Things fall out of the trees, birds poop in it, little creatures are all over in it, a fly falls in it and dies. So this is your lymphatic fluid. And if it's just sitting in this bathtub and has nowhere to go, what's going to happen is that bathtub is going to fill to the top and then it's going to overflow. And what that overflow is your arm swelling, or in my case, my whole leg swelling when I had lymphedema in my leg. That's the overflow of lymph. There's no place for this water to go in the bathtub. So it just goes wherever it can, and it overflows. In our body, that means it goes into the extracellular spaces. So it just goes wherever under the skin, anywhere that it can. So you attach a hose, you put a hose into that bathtub in the forest. And so, you know, when you put a hose in, imagine you're putting a hose into this bathtub and the air is all going to come out. And it's going to do the blah, 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 blah. Then all the last air bubble is going to come out. Your hose is now full of water. So some of the fluid in the left the bathtub and went into the hose, but it still does no good if it's just sitting in the hose. This hose has to go somewhere. So we take the hose and we drain it out of the bathtub, and all of a sudden the bath water is decreasing in the bathtub, and it rains and it fills up again and it decreases because we've now got a hose draining the water out of there. So this visual is how I view doing lymphatic drainage. If you can move 4, 5, 6 liters in a day without lymph drainage, and then you start doing lymph drainage and you're moving 10, your bathtub water just went way down. And then when it fills up again, you've got cleaner water instead of dirty water with dead things and whatnot in it. So if this hose is blocked, what's going to happen? It's not going to drain. And a blockage can be anything from an injury. You think about a bruise. You hit your arm. That's what swelling is in our body. We hit our arm, you know, there's a bruise, there's inflammation around the elbow. That's a blockage in that hose. So working with this system can help you work around all of those blockages. Surgery is a huge one. Anytime there's an interruption in the lymph system, and I always wanted to have like a happy ending story with this. There is a happy ending story with this actually, because you're learning how to do lymph drainage and there are things you can do to help yourself. But the happy ending story I wanted to have was that we have surgery and then everything heals and it's perfect and it's all better and we go back to normal. But anytime there has been an interruption in the lymphatic system from surgery, cutting those lymphatic vessels, anytime there's an interruption, we are now in a situation where we will forever in that area be lymphatically compromised. Our body has to find a new pathway. It has to, we have lymph vessels that are together, they're cut through surgery, and they're trying to find their way back to each other so the lymphatic fluid can continue to flow along its path. So these vessels are trying to find their way back, but anytime there's surgery, maybe they're not quite back. Maybe they're finding a different vessel to attach to, or maybe they never find their way back and the fluid can't get from over here to over here. So surgery definitely redefines the lymphatic system. So as I said, I always wished for a happy ending, but the happiest ending we can have is doing lymph drainage and working with that changed and damaged tissue. I would like to address a little bit of scar tissue. Katie, how much time did you allow me tonight?
You, it was the same as before, so it was 5:30 to 8:30. So.
Oh, goodness. Oh, great. I have lots of time. We won't, okay, good.
So
we won't go all the way to 8:30 since I won't be doing as much hands-on, or well, actually,
yeah.
But okay. So
I do have another question when you have time.
Okay. All right. I have time right now.
You want it right now?
Sure.
And do you need a restroom break soon?
No, I'm still good.
Okay.
Yeah, let's give it another let's give it a minute.
Perfect. So have you heard about the surgery that hooks lymph vessels that aren't working very well to ones that do?
I have, and it's fascinating, and I have not heard of it being all that successful yet, but I'll tell you what, as soon as it is, I will be following that very closely. If somebody has heard more about it than I have, I would love to know. But I know they're still really working on how to make it effective. And they've also talked about, you know, how to, I mean, you can't really replace a lymph node, but how to somehow do surgery to make other lymph nodes do the work of the ones that they removed or something like that. I have heard of it. I've heard that it's in the works, and I've heard that they're getting closer and closer to making that a possibility.
Yeah, right. It sounds like OHSU is doing it.
It sounds like what?
OHSU is doing it right now.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I had heard that they were talking about doing that. There's a lot of people up there that are really innovative with that. So has anybody heard anything positive about the surgeries being effective? I'm
unmuting one person that's done lots of research or has looked into it, if she wants to speak.
I'd love to hear what she has to say.
I am seeing one of the doctors at OHSU. When we went up to talk to her about reconstructive surgery, and I was talking to her because I had 12 lymph nodes taken out, 10 of which had cancer. Mm-hmm. And so I have lymphedema in my arm and my side. And what she suggested was doing the surgery. She said it's a long surgery because it's very intricate, but she's actually going to be doing those surgeries. As a matter of fact, that was last fall, so she's probably doing them already. Well, when they could do.
She just got the money to buy the equipment last year when we saw her, and so she should be doing surgeries now.
That is exciting. I would actually like to know more about that, because last I researched, they were still kind of trying to make it work.
Yeah, no, she was thinking that she could definitely help me.
Can you provide Katie with her name, and then Katie can have that as a resource?
I certainly can.
That would be great, because I'm guessing you're not the only person that would be interested in communicating with her and learning about that. That's right. That's moving along faster than I had heard.
Yeah, she had just gotten the approval. I don't remember where she went for her training.
Perhaps Florida. They're doing a lot in Florida. That's where most of the research I'm aware of has been happening in Florida.
Yeah, but yeah, she was feeling pretty confident she could give me some help.
Wow, that is awesome. I hope you do the surgery, and I hope that it wow, that would be life altering for a lot of people.
It would.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if you'd heard about it, how you felt about it.
Oh, I have heard about it, but not as much as you just told us, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. And the thing is that any surgery is going to cause compromise to the lymph system, but surgeons are becoming much more aware of that. And obviously, if she's doing a surgery on the lymph system, these are microscopic vessels. I've seen them. I've done dissections. They're tiny, tiny little things. So I imagine it to be a quite intricate surgery, but I think it's exciting. And if I was in your situation, I mean, my leg is managed. I've been doing lymph drainage on it for so long. My leg is managed. If it wasn't, I would consider the surgery myself. Absolutely.
Okay.
If it was something that was available to me, absolutely, I would consider it. And also, I mean, this sounds, not that you want to be a guinea pig, but we got to have some people that are in the early stages of these surgeries that are willing to give it a shot. It's probably like, I can't imagine how it would make it worse.
Yeah. That would be my only concern, is if it would make it worse, but I don't think so.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I can't imagine how it would. I've had situations where I've worked with people who have stuff going on in the lower arm. I don't even touch the lower arm. I just work in the armpit and up in the chest, because this is the pathway. So even if they're doing surgery to try to work on the armpit, perhaps you could work a little further down the line, like where the armpit fluid is going into the chest. You can still be helping yourself move that fluid, just not working that area too.
Right.
That's exciting.
And then I have another one. You mentioned surgery changing the lymph system, which makes sense. But will chemo?
Yeah, when we have surgery, yeah.
Will chemo-induced neuropathy cause lymph system issues as well?
God, I wish I knew the answer to that, and I wish somebody knew the answer to that. I work with so many chemo patients that have neuropathy in their hands or their feet, and I've tried all kinds of things. So I also this last year bought I have a business partner, and she and I own Pacific Northwest Thermography, and we bought a digital infrared camera. And I've been doing all kinds of study on the lymph system. That was my motivation, actually, to be doing thermal imaging. So I've been taking images of people with neuropathy, and it is fascinating. It's just across the board, my camera is showing me all kinds of interesting things. So I have one person who had a chest surgery. The sternum was broken. It was a thymus thing. And so his hands, so the way a digital thermal imaging camera works is it's testing the temperature of the skin and right under the skin. So that can be affected by nerves, obviously inflammation, medications, tissue growths like tumors or whatnot. So his hands had neuropathy, and they're bright red when I image them on my camera, which means that shows that's the hottest. And his feet had neuropathy, and they were purple. I could barely see them on the images, which is cold. And so the same body has neuropathy from drugs, and the hands are hot and the feet are cold. So I contacted some other folks I know who have thermal cameras who do a lot of this work. And I was like, what the heck does this mean? No one knows. So then I started looking at a couple of other patients who have had mastectomies and have some issues in their fingertips. And same thing, some of them were cold and some of them were showing up hot. So the hot, again, is usually inflammation. So, everyone I've asked ask 10 people, what kind of food you should eat, and they're going to tell you 10 different things. Same thing is true with this. So the neuropathy from chemo, or the neuropathy from, anti-rejection drugs, or from, some other thing, I can't get that answer. I do know after years of working with people with neuropathy that getting the fluid out of the way, remember the picture that we looked at of the nerves and the yellow nerves and the green lymphatic vessels, if those lymph vessels are full and they're putting pressure on the nerves are going to be way worse. They're either going to be more active or less active because they're being pinched off. So putting some focus on the lymph system and doing lymph drainage and the dry brushing I'm going to show you and movement, it can do nothing but help that. And I realize that neuropathy is uncomfortable, and especially if it's in your lower extremities, it's hard to feel comfortable walking. It's painful to work on it sometimes when you have neuropathy. But if you do it in a really gentle way and really slow, I think that what I'm seeing, at least with the people I work with, is that it improves things dramatically. I do have people who had neuropathy from chemo who, when they grabbed something, they couldn't feel the something in their hand. And after working all of this area up in the armpit and around the elbow, just getting the fluid drained out as much as we could, they had more feeling in there and less pain, less burning feeling, or less cold in there. Any other questions? Did I answer that? Well, did I get that well enough? I went on a little side trip, but I hope I looped around. So the extracellular fluid that our lymph is bathing in is, it's also putting pressure on our vessels. The fluid that's just under our skin is putting pressure on everything. So moving that takes me back around to movement in general. Moving that and not allowing that to be so stagnant, and moving the fluid outside of the lymphatic system in the extracellular spaces is almost as important as moving the fluid inside the lymph system, for that reason, that it's putting pressure on everything. Do we all have an understanding of why we would want to work the lymph system and what it's actually doing, and a little bit about, you know, it's kind of lymphatic system 101 in a nutshell for an intro class like this, but hopefully we all have a little bit of an understanding of the system and what it's doing and why at this point. And I feel like I want to show you, oh, no. I want to show you, now that I know how to share my screen, I want to show you what adhesions look like. So I'm going to give you a little disclaimer here. We're going to look at a couple pictures that are just on, just Google pictures. There's only like 4 or 5 of them that are pictures of inside the body. So if that grosses you out, maybe don't look at these next couple pictures. They're not bloody and gross. They're just, they are internal pictures. So let me go ahead and show you what some scar tissue looks like, or adhesions, if I can find it. So adhesions are like gum in your hair. Literally, I have seen them when I've done dissections. I had no idea until I actually had them in my hands how crazy strong adhesions are. They are, I mean, you can't break them with your hands. They're strong, and they are often, so you can have them from, like, I'm going to show you one. I think there's one in this batch of pictures that's in the intestines, and they can hold your intestines, your organs together. They can literally bind your organs together so that they're not moving properly. In the case of surgery, we all know about scar tissue. You can see the scar on the outside of your body. Well, our internal environment gets that too. And then that manifests in such symptoms as, you know, pain. Obviously, if we've got internal scar tissue, we've got pain. And perhaps the organs not functioning properly. When we get adhesions in the lung, I have seen the donor that I saw this on was 103. So this did not impede her life, obviously. She lived to be 103. But she had adhesions that held her lung. This is her rib cage and sternum. This is her lung. Adhesions about an inch long that held her lung to her bones, to the point that I'm sure when she breathed, she didn't have the movement that she had had in the past. Amazing. We couldn't pull them apart. So you can have adhesions anywhere in your body. In her case, she was 103. It was probably just from breathing oxygen for all those years and just being alive that long. But then adhesions I had a hysterectomy and an oophorectomy when I had ovarian cancer, and I'm certain that inside my body there's adhesions where my ovary used to be, and where my round ligament, was attached to my uterus. And when we have any surgery, there's going to be some adhesions, but the hope is that they're pretty small. So I'm going to go ahead and find that and finish. Can you see my screen?
No.
Oh, well, let me go back and, strange. Going back. That might have been one lucky time that I was able to do it. Oh, can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Oh my God, Zoom. I feel so smart when I actually get it to do something. Even though I realize this is probably like most 5th graders can do this better than me right now. Okay, over here on the left, this adhesion. That's a huge adhesion right there. These apparently are very common adhesions, these ones right here in the middle. The drawings are indicating where they can be throughout our bodies. But those are tiny adhesions. But I assure you, you couldn't tear those apart. We're going to move down. This is in the abdomen, where the pointer is. This is one organ side right here. This is another side of the organ. It's like gum in your hair. It's amazing. And your body it's scar tissue. It like puts down this matrix, and your body just continues to build it. This right here is fat. The yellow in this one here with the big black border around it, this is fat, and there's an instrument pulling the fat back away from the side of the organ here, and these are all adhesions in there. So we're going to move down to this is giant. And I'm not sure what the organ is, but you can see the whiter area up here is the organ. This is stuck. It's not moving. It's like probably not going very far when this person moves or breathes. This over here, this actually is the small intestine here, abdominal wall, and then these are adhesions. There's one of the intestines that I'm hoping is on here. Well, here's one right down here. Again, the yellow is fat. So this adhesion here is holding those organs together. Okay, here we go. Here is a uterus and 2 ovaries, and look at these adhesions right here. Just stuck in place. This over here on the far left, this says adhesions from cesarean. And here we go. Here's the one I really want you to see. This one right here, where the arrow is pointing to the adhesion and this small intestine. So those intestines, so our food is moving through our intestines, down through our small intestine to our large intestine, and then out. And if those intestines aren't moving, our food's not, first of all, digesting, and second of all, sometimes it's not even moving through the body. I'm gonna move on from this and close this down. I just wanted you to really have an image of what adhesions can look like. And this is, I saw a lot of like this one here in the gut. that, like I said, you could cut them apart, but I'm going to stop this sharing. You can cut them apart, but you cannot pull them apart. So when we're working on the gut and on the belly, even if you have belly fat, you're working through it. Don't worry about that. The pressure of your hand will still work through that. But I'm going to show you a little bit about how to work on some of the scar tissue. It doesn't matter where you have it. Many of us have it if we've had babies, even just the expansion of either the breast or the belly, and then closing back down again and coming back down to its pre-pregnant or pre-nursing size can absolutely cause scar tissue and those sorts of adhesions. So, I was pretty blown away at how tough the tissue is. So when we're doing this, you're not going to see, immediate results because you're working with a really strong, fibrous tissue. I could use a 5-minute break. Nature's calling to me. Are you on that?
Good.
I want us to do right now, or if you're not feeling your back sore or whatever, you don't want to do this, then just pour it in your memory bank. So it's twists. You can do them sitting, you can do them lying, but imagine your gut is just absolutely full of fluid, which it is, and it's full of, we've got all of our intestines, our fascia, our muscles, and half of our lymph resides in our gut. The reason being is that there's 2 different types of tissue in the gut that don't exist other places in the body. They call it GALT, gut-associated lymphatic tissue, and MALT, mucosal-associated lymphatic tissue, which actually does occur in the throat and the vagina and the anus. And so it's a mucousy sort of lymphatic tissue, which is a little different. But you can look at that like the difference between a loofah sponge. Sorry, I'm muted. Oh, I'm unmuted. Okay, we're good. God, I have a couple ex-husbands who would love to be able to do that to me, Katie. So
That's great.
It's the difference between like a loofah sponge and the really absorbent sponges that you do your dishes with, like this. That's the difference between that mucus associated lymph tissue and the gut associated. Those are the spongy, the really wet, spongy type of lymphatic tissue. And other lymphatic tissue is not quite as absorbent. Maybe the fluid moves in and out a little bit more. But what we're doing with twists and with folds and with the hands-on stuff that we're going to do is wringing it out. So you got a dish towel and you wring it out. That's exactly what a twist is doing here. So literally, let's just take a couple minutes. When you're facing me, breathe in. And then when you exhale, just twist as much as your back will allow you to one side. And then when you're ready to take another inhale, come on back to the center. Take your inhale and exhale to the other side. And not only is this helpful to your back, you guys just continue doing this. Every time you want to take an inhale, come back to the center. And when you're ready to exhale, twist to one side. So not only is this helpful to your back and your musculature, but seriously, this is like wringing out your dish rag or your sponge. It's literally, if you were to look at yourself in the mirror, you can see that you're wringing out that lymphatic tissue in your belly. So now pay attention to it coming up closer to your shoulders. So as you twist, take a little bit more through your chest. And now it becomes a little bit like you're wringing out the lungs a bit. And I know it's hard to visualize actually wringing out the lungs, but they're attached to everything that's twisting right now. So we are affecting our internal organs with every outside movement that we're doing also. So a couple more times, just breathe. Inhale facing me. And as you exhale, twisting, focusing on your upper body. This is something I think needs to be done every day. I have my grandkids are 4 and 6 and they do this every day. I've had them doing this their whole lives. I twist every day. I think that it's really important. And you'll notice when I get to the Ileocecal Valve, which is where your appendix sits, and the pylorus, you'll understand a little bit more about why twisting is so helpful to the organ structure of your body. So that's twisting. And then this kind of goes without saying, if your shoulder allows it, if you've had a mastectomy, if you've had any breast work, go as far as you can. But anytime we've got a whole bunch of lymph in the armpit, remember the little skeleton with the lymph nodes, we all know, some of us have had many removed. This is a rich area in lymph. The lymph drains from the armpit. We're going to go over this again, but it drains to the heart. The breast drains up into the armpit and back around the top. There's a whole lot going on here. So literally a side bend and stretching as much as you can with your armpit, you're draining your lymph just by doing this. You're draining the armpit lymph. And you can take it a little bit with your arm with your other arm. You can, if your arm doesn't go up because of your shoulder, you can just bring the arm up as far as it goes and then provide an anchor with your other hand and just stretch the tissue. Obviously, if you have scar tissue here, you can put your hand on your scar tissue, but just stop if it's uncomfortable. So just stretch one armpit and then stretch the other. This alone, so imagine your lymph vessels, if you're never lifting your arms or you're never twisting, your lymph vessels are just kind of hanging out and never get stretched. And then you go to stretch them. Imagine it's like taking a kink out of a hose. The fluid just has freedom to move. So a little more stretching on the side so it's equal to the other side. And remember how we saw all of the lymph vessels in the side of our neck, right behind the ear, that Waterwheel area? Think about looking forward. I mean, just right now, the new University of Zoom, all these poor kids that are on the computer all day long. Everybody has neck pain now because they're all sitting like this and they're doing this. So this area is not moving. And if this area is not moving, that fluid's moving a lot slower. So if your neck allows it, drop your head to one side, your ear towards the shoulder, and then reach out the arm, the opposite arm. So once you're here, kind of stretch. So right now I'm really feeling it through this area. So if you're not feeling it, tuck or lift your chin a little bit. What you want to do is stretch this area so you're releasing all of the trapped lymphatic vessels in these tight muscles. And then, I know it seems like a really tiny movement that won't make a bunch of difference, but open and close your mouth a few times. And when you close your mouth, you'll see that this stretches these muscles even more. So just open and close. And if you're not feeling it, lift your chin a little bit more. I assure you, if you have lymphatic congestion and you do this every day, if you're not feeling the stretch, move your arm, lift your head, move it until you find the stretch. If you do this every day, you will free up a lot of those lymph vessels that are trapped in that area. Instead of just lifting your head up, take your hand to your head and push your head back up. And then the other side. So again, if you had a port, and this is fine to do with a port, but if you did have a port, there's scar tissue under there where the port was. This is great. This is something that definitely should be done by people who had ports. So once you get there, remember, open and close your mouth a few times. And give it a good stretch. Lift your chin or drop your arm more to get that good stretch all the way from your ear to your shoulder. And then when you're ready to push your head up, use your other hand and push your head up. Indiana or anybody else that has breast or especially with the lymph surgery that you might potentially have, this is great to be doing regularly to get your neck moving. All right, the other thing that can be helpful is forward folds, which you can do sitting, you can do standing. I'm not going to join you with the forward fold right now because my space is so limited. And if yours is as well, then just know that folding forward like that can be helpful for draining the lymph in the belly. So the other thing that I think there's a picture of it on your packet is a lunge, a high lunge. And that is to open up the area that's in the pelvis where our lymph is moving from the legs up into the body, up into the upper parts of the body. So if you're not comfortable doing that standing, that can also be accomplished sitting. The idea is just to open up that area in the pelvis. So take a look at that picture, or, you know, any kind of low lunge or lunge, just to open up the front of the hip flexors in the belly. Take a drink here 1 sec while you guys are thinking about that. Okay, and then the other thing, as far as movement goes, that is so helpful, and 2 more things for the lymph system that is super helpful, is vibration, which literally bouncing, shaking, just shaking out your arms like there's peanut butter on your fingers, standing and vibrating. There's these cool vibrating machines that you can stand on. There's less affordable or less expensive versions and extremely expensive ones. But these vibrating machines, or a trampoline, just bouncing, vibrating, moving, that's going to shake up your lymph vessels. And in the lymphatic vessels, there's little muscular units that are pushing the fluid through, all throughout those vessels. And so shaking them and vibrating them is getting them activated. So that sort of movement can really help increase the flow of the lymph. And the other thing is your legs up the wall. Again, this is something I do almost every day. Taking your feet and placing them up on the couch or up on your bed, or laying on your bed with your feet up the wall, or laying on the ground with your feet up a wall. Just getting your feet up as far as you can is extremely helpful as far as assisting the lymph to move back up to the heart area. And again, if you don't know the direction of the flow, it seems kind of counterintuitive that we're trying to get it to move from the feet up, but it is working against gravity all day long. So putting your feet up the wall, if you had any lower abdominal surgeries, highly recommend any lymph in your feet at all or legs. I absolutely recommend putting your feet up against the wall every day, as many times as you can or need to. When my leg was really full and when I had a lot of lymphedema in that leg, it was 10 minutes every hour and a half I would put my legs up. So it can be extremely helpful. Those are the movements that I think are most important for getting our lymph moving. And honestly, walking. They've shown that vigorous exercise, like running, can actually make the lymph system a little bit slower and inflame some of the tissues. So vigorous exercise is less recommended for moving the lymph, but moderate exercise, walking, yoga, bicycling, dance classes, whatever it is that you do, anything that's not extremely vigorous is going to help move your fluid in your body. Let's jump right into doing some of the lymph. I'm going to leave my computer where it is right now, and then I'll have to rearrange things here in a minute. So as I said, the lymph is all flowing up, and it's coming, its terminus is up here under the clavicles. We saw those large subclavian veins, and we saw the larger vessels come into this area. So there's my clavicles. So it's right above. It's not on the clavicles out this way, it's above. So my fingers dip into that little hole. So normally if we were in a class face-to-face, I would be able to put my hands on you and show you how much pressure to use, but the amount of pressure that you're gonna use on this area, it's the same amount of pressure you would use to massage a baby bunny or a squirrel. There we go, yeah. So you're not gonna go deeper than that. You don't wanna hurt your baby bunny. So you're gonna go that deep, not very deep. Not baby mouse, but baby bunny. So you can use a little pressure, but not a whole lot. And my fingers are moving in a little circle. And remember how I said in the beginning that there's a lymph vessel that comes into a node and then it leaves? So if our fingers are on that area where the fluid is leaving the lymph node and moving back into the vessel, and our fingers are just blocking that, the fluid can't leave. So we want to be lifting the whole time. So we're going to lift. This is an exaggerated movement. but my fingers are circling and lifting and circling and lifting. And this is about what we're doing all along above the clavicle. So we're gonna go all the way out. Most of us won't feel a lymph node here. You might feel puffy areas. The cool thing about doing it yourself, which is why I really, I mean, I love doing the work on people, and I love having it done to me, but doing it on ourselves is especially helpful because you can feel from within, and then you can also feel with your fingers. So all along the tops of the clavicles. Your thyroid sits right here. Remember we saw that on the pictures? This muscle here that engages when you look the opposite way, your SCM, there's a chain in the front and a chain in the back of lymph nodes that looks just like a chain of pearls. So you're gonna massage down.
Does it matter if you do clock or counterclockwise?
Nope. So you have the option of sort of pinching that SCM, that muscle that you can feel along your neck. And if you've milked a goat, you have an advantage. It's very similar. Although even though I was a midwife and a breastfeeding consultant, I really am terrible at milking goats. So I don't even know why I use that example, because I was almost unsuccessful. But I do know that it's the same motion. So there you go. You're sort of milking this area, and you're pushing the lymphatic fluid from lymph node to vessel to lymph node and down. We're trying to guide that down to the terminus here. And so this again it's slow, and it's not aggressive. The other way I like to drain my lymph, I have allergies, environmental allergies. So right now the pollen is crazy. I take my hand like this, and again, during pollen season, I'm doing this literally daily. My finger is on that water wheel, and I'm draining down. And you're not squeezing your throat like you're choking. You're sort of dragging the external tissue over the underlying tissue. So my motion is down, not choky in. And so straight down, finger on that water wheel and straight down. So even if you had breast surgery or abdominal surgery or back surgery or, you know, whatever, this is one of the main areas. Your abdomen and your throat are your main areas of lymph. So you still want to do this area. So do both sides. It's more like, so what I was saying before also about the lymphatic fluid being a little bit more like an IV drip bag. So imagine it's moving in like waves through your body where your blood is just a constant flow. And people always ask, well, how long should I do this? You know, how long do you have? How long do you want to do it? If you're taking a bunch of medications, start with 10 minutes, start with 15 minutes, do 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at night. If you had a mastectomy and your arm's puffing up, you might do an hour. You might do an hour. Whatever works for you. I used to say 10 minutes to start, then move up in 10-minute increments until you found what feels like it's effective for you. But I had an issue with a fall. I took a really bad fall in August and had a pretty severe injury to this clavicle and had a hematoma about this size in my breast. And so I took my own advice, started with 10 minutes, went to 20 minutes. And what I ended up settling on was I spent about an hour and a half a day working on this area to get the lymph out of there. So I'm not saying that you're gonna have to work an hour and a half. It's just sometimes it's gonna take a little bit more depending on your situation. So we've done our neck and we've done our main drains. So while we're up at the upper part of the neck, we're gonna put our fingers right behind the ear, right where the jaw and the neck come together in that water wheel. And you're just making circles. Does not matter if it's front or back because you're gonna go both ways. Just really gentle circles. And none of this is aggressive. You can do this to other people too. The only thing I recommend is that you make sure, again, that they're not, you know, taking a bunch of medications. And also the one contraindication that we just have to look at is congestive heart failure, because we're sending more fluid into the heart. So in folks that have congestive heart failure, it's not recommended to do a whole lot of lymph. It's just so much fluid ends up in the heart that the heart gets a little bogged down. So that area behind the ear, if you're making your circles forward, make them the other direction.
Is it better to use oil, water, etc. When doing draining circles, or nothing?
I don't use anything. I like to feel what, you mean oil on your hands?
Yeah.
Oh, no. It's easier to feel when the tissues change if you have nothing on your hand.
What about oil on the spot?
You know, that is completely up to you. My recommendation is going to be for all of you to not use anything, no lubricant right now while you're getting used to it, just so you can feel what's under your hands without anything in the way. But I use CBD oil all the time on my injuries, and that's in, like, I don't know, grapeseed oil or something. So when I was working my injuries for an hour a day, I was using a CBD oil. So you can certainly use something on there. So after the ears, and you don't have to do, we start and finish here above the clavicles, but the rest of this doesn't, the order isn't necessary. You don't have to go up, you can go down first. You don't even have to do behind your ears if you're in a hurry, but I do recommend doing the throat every day. So after we do the water wheel behind the ears, we're going to move down into the chest. So between each rib, find a rib, and then let your fingers sink under it. And then find the next rib. It's that area between the ribs that we want to be working. So you've got your sternum right through the center. And then you've got the ribs and the space in between, that intercostal space. So you're going to stick your fingers between the ribs and massage inward. And you might find, like the other day when I was doing some lymph drainage, because I've been managing pollen allergies, I did feel a few little lymph nodes in here, and they feel like lentils. Maybe not quite as hard, but they're that size. And so if you feel one, just stay on it a little bit longer, and then towards the center. So if you have your little diagrams, you can draw an arrow going towards the center, down on the neck, and then towards the center here. And your ribs go all the way down. So even if you have breast tissue, you can work around it and still drain towards the center. So those intercostals towards the center. And after you've drained everything in towards the center, the sternum drains straight up. So you're gonna just pull that skin up. And again, I'm not using a whole lot of pressure. None of this should be uncomfortable. It's a little uncomfortable when you get on your scar tissue and work it, but none of this should feel uncomfortable. And we're gonna get into the armpit. So the whole armpit area, it's not just the pit, it's the whole area that's full of lymph. So you're gonna drain that towards your heart. So you're reaching over and you're draining towards your heart. For some of us, if you're really strong and you have a lot of musculature in your armpit area, lifting your arm is gonna tighten everything. So you might wanna start lower. And we're just massaging towards the heart. And 99% of us will find a tender lymph node in here. If you don't have lymph nodes on one side, you can still massage this area, because if you don't have lymph nodes, you have scar tissue. So still massaging this area. And if you do find one that's tender, hang out on it. And remember, you're lifting your finger up and back in little circles. everybody feel like they're understanding how to do that one? And if you haven't switched sides, go to the other side. Just know that if you're hurting yourself, you're going too deep. And if you're not really feeling it, you're probably not going deep enough. I do love to have my hands on people and be able to show you, you know, the amount of pressure, but I'm trusting here that you guys can figure this out. So if you do find lymph nodes, I'm on one that feels like an almond. Not as hard, but it's almond shaped right in through here. And I'm aiming right here. So if you've got your little diagram, you might want to make your arrow up to the heart. So straight up to the heart area. And yes, it's coming up into the subclavian and down, but just if, as long as you're getting it towards the heart, you're in the right direction. Usually the armpit is where you're going to find the most congested lymph. Now, for those of you who have had lymph removal in the armpit, you can do the whole arm. I don't really feel like I need to drain my arms because I have not had breast surgeries. So when I'm doing my lymph drainage, I just don't feel as attached to it. So if you haven't had a breast surgery, this is optional, but if you have, by all means, draining up. Those lymph nodes that I was pointing out, and I don't remember who, or I don't know who it was who had the hand trigger finger stuff going on, but right in there is where it's at. So you want to be really gentle and you want to just move that through. And then in the crook of the arm, you want to stick your fingers right in there. And if we're engaging our muscles while we're doing this, the muscles are tight. So you want to put yourself in a position where you're not tightening up your muscle. So if you're having to hold your arm up, maybe you want to support it on a table. And then you're going to massage up in the crook of the arm. And if you find a lymph node, if you're lucky enough to find a spot out here that feels tender, absolutely work on it. It probably means it's a full lymph node, and that means that it could really be affecting the lymph in your hand. I'm going to show you about dry brushing in a little bit, but this is the lymph in the elbow with just your hand. Any comments, questions, or anything about what we've done so far? Okay. Let's see. I'm going to readjust a little so you can see my belly. Sort of. Okay. So here's my belly button. Here's the bottom of my sternum. Straight line up. So find your belly button, draw a straight line up, and you're going to come up about halfway. And then you're going to go to your right. About 2 fingers width from the midline. Here's my middle. I go about 2 fingers over. This is your pyloric valve, your pylorus. And what your pylorus does is it's where your stomach empties. Your stomach empties, your stomach's sitting right here on your left side, and it's emptying into the pylorus, which is this tube, has a valve in there, a sphincter. That's just like any other sphincter. It's nice and shut, and opens and shuts and opens and shuts and lets little bits of the stomach content out. This area can be really fickle, and this area is also right under your gallbladder. It's right above your liver. It can be an area that's very uncomfortable for us. And again, if you have extra fat on your belly, fear not. The pressure of your hand is still getting through there. You're still making contact with your pylorus. It's amazing. People go, how can you feel that through my belly fat? I have belly fat too, and I can feel it. So you find this area that feels hopefully a little uncomfortable. If it doesn't feel a little uncomfortable, try this right after you eat, and you might find your pylorus a little bit better. But if you can't find that specific area, use the palm of your hand so you're getting a bigger area, and just massage that. This is amazing when you've eaten too much and you're full and your stomach's not emptying. This is also incredible with little kids. You know, they eat and then they run around and then they get all sick. This is a great spot to work with that. So little circles one direction and then the others. And so mine wasn't feeling aggravated when I started, but now I'm definitely feeling it. I haven't eaten for several hours, so I'm probably hungry. And so that's probably why it's aggravated in me. But it's very, very easy to find once you get started and there's any aggravation in there. And the other thing you can do with this is stretch your belly out and stretch it in different directions. So, okay, imagine the twists that we were doing earlier and where my pylorus is. When I'm twisting to the left away from it, really twisting that area, right? So twisting is really stretching that pylorus. So draw that on your little diagram if you haven't. It's about 2 fingers to the right and about halfway between the belly button and the bottom of your sternum. And that's not going to be 100% the same for all of us, but certainly it's in that area. And work it 1 minute, work it 5 minutes, you know, as much as you feel. Just trust yourself to know how much work you want to do on it. And trust me, if you do too much on it, you're going to feel a little nauseous and you'll know when to stop. So that's your pylorus. Now we're going to go to the ileocecal valve, which is where your appendix is if you have one. So find your belly button again, and then you're going to find your hip bone. If you need to stand up to do that, then find the front of your hip bone. I probably should not have worn a black shirt for this, but hip bone, belly button, straight line, halfway. This is your ileocecal valve. You're going to do the same exact thing here. So this area, the ileocecal area, is where the large intestine and the small intestine come together. And it's a tiny little, it's like a Fruit Loop size, tiny little sphincter. The large and small intestine come together. And I'm trusting that you all are still continuing to find your ileocecal valve while I'm describing this. And your appendix is hanging off of it if you still have one. And next to your appendix is this little area called a cecum. And it's like that one area that I showed you of lymphatic reservoir on the upper abdomen. It's a lymphatic reservoir. So there's an extra little place that is just full of lymphatic fluid, probably because if inflammation occurs in the sphincter or in the appendix, you've got a whole wash of lymphatic fluid that is able to come in there and supply lymphocytes. I'm going to turn my light on. It's getting dark in here while you guys are continuing to do that. Oh, that's much better. So ileocecal valve between the belly button and the hip. So does anybody feel like they can't find that or need further explanation on how to work with that or find it?
Kimby, do you want me to unmute everybody right now? Or
Yes, I would like to know if anybody wants to find, and these two are important spots. So if anybody needs additional guidance on how to find that, I want you to know how to find both of those.
I unmuted everybody, so if anybody has any
Patty's still muted.
that's on her.
Oh.
That's on her part. I don't know how to do Zoom.
Okay. That's on you, Patty. All right, so nobody has any.
Okay, I'm good.
I had a really quick one.
I just want to make sure that we all know where to find the pylorus and the ileocecal valve, because as far as the abdomen goes, I'm going to show you the descending colon also, but as far as the abdomen goes, honestly, I access these 2 points whenever I'm traveling and I'm eating, especially in like another country. I eat when I'm eating weird food I know nothing about. I just do this all the time just to make sure I'm moving stuff through my gut.
And so the appendix can be, the appendix and your pylorus are both on the right side?
Yes, these are
Okay.
both on the right side.
Can
So,
I ask a question about the appendix?
yes.
Okay, I had mine removed a year and a half ago. How long does it take for the scar tissue to heal?
Oh, you're well past that. You can start doing, if you have a surgery on something and you start to heal, it's about 8 weeks that tissue is workable. You can start working on things.
But what I mean is, like, it kind of bothered me to wear like jeans, the waistband. So I was assuming the scar tissue wasn't quite healed, and I've heard other people say that too. It's just a little tender.
Why did they remove it? Did you have because you had a ruptured appendix?
Yes, it was rupturing.
So sometimes they put a staple in there if there was some infection in the surrounding tissue that they had to deal with.
There was lots of infection.
Okay, so you might have.
There was, I don't know about from the appendix. They said I had bladder infection, kidney infection, and the appendix was perforated. And I haven't, all this time of lockdown wearing, elastic pants and everything.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't noticed it. But I've heard other women say too, when you have like some kind of a surgery down there, whether it's your uterus or your appendix, that it'll take a while before a waistband feels okay. So
unfortunately for some people that is a very long while. And remember the pictures of the adhesions I showed you?
Yes.
The fact that you had infection in there probably means you have adhesions in there too.
Okay, so when they look and they say infection in the bladder and the kidney, and this is perforated, does that mean, did you understand that's what I was saying? I don't know if, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but, and so you had a lot of infection going on, but like so oftentimes when we have an appendix rupture, it ruptures into the cavity, and then all the surrounding tissue gets gets infected. And so when they go in there, they're not going to leave infection in the surrounding tissue.
Right.
And sometimes when they take that infection out, they have to put little staples in, and staples often stay sometimes forever.
And I never saw that surgeon again because it was an emergency. But my oncologist, I said it was a trifecta, and he said no. Actually, he thought it was all because of I can't talk. All because of the appendix. But I didn't mean to hold this up that long. I just wondered about whether that kind of massaging will help.
Yes, and it's okay that you held this up, because that's actually, if we don't have, if those of us that are here haven't had that, we're certainly going to have an infection inside our body at some point, because we are bodies. Whether it's a throat infection, an appendix, a vaginal infection, a colon infection.
Yes.
We're all going to have one if we haven't yet. If we are lucky enough to live long enough, we will have an internal infection. So this applies to all of us, actually. So those adhesions, and that's why I showed you those adhesions, is because they develop with surgery, and they develop with inflammation. So you probably had, and your appendix probably didn't just all of a sudden one day wake up and explode. Your appendix, if it was perforated, was probably unhappy for a little while.
It was, I was aware, I thought I pulled a muscle. It was painful for 3 or 4 days. Well, I think it was the 3rd day I called OMG, and they said, go to the emergency room. They saved.
Finish what you were going to say, sorry.
I said, they saved my life. They said,
yeah. So when you end up with peritonitis like that, with inflammation inside the gut cavity, we've got a bag around our organs. Every organ has a bag around it. You know about the pericardium around the heart. They're separated by these soft slippery bags. And when that bag gets infected, it creates that adhesion and that scar tissue. So then instead of the bags moving smoothly against each other, there's the bag that's on the side of the organ, and then there's the bag that's on the side of the rest of the cavity. They're supposed to move freely, by themselves. But when we end up with an infection in any area, sticks, and it moves as a unit. And so every time you breathe or move or do anything, this is now moving as a unit. So I didn't mention this before, but this is actually has a lot to do with what we're talking about now. So when you take a deep breath, your kidney, for example, moves 3 centimeters. That's this much. That's 3 fingers. This finger is 1 centimeter from here to here. That's 3 centimeters is how much your kidney moves when you just take a deep breath. So our organs are constantly, it's called motility when the organs are moving. The organs are moving on their own inside the body that's moving. So it's like a bag of caterpillars, they're moving on their own, and they're supposed to move independent of one another. But those adhesions and not enough slippery lymphatic fluid and age and surgery and perhaps poor diet or poor elimination in our body, and I don't just mean pooping, I mean elimination of toxins, causes this stickiness inside. And what you're feeling could very likely be everything just kind of gummed together.
Yeah.
And we have, colitis, irritable bowel syndrome, cystitis. These are all inflammatory processes in our body where things are not moving the way that they should. And I'm saying, to be honest, I do believe that doing this work on yourself can resolve those. You wouldn't believe, my kids used to laugh at me all the time because I'd get these phone calls from clients and they'd say, oh my God, I took the best poop in my whole life and I thought of you. Tell you how many times that happened. So it does work. It really does work to move stuff. But, why it's there, why it happened, why we have this discomfort. The waistband thing is one I hear all the time. People say it all the time. It hurts to wear jeans. I don't like wearing jeans. I can't sit in jeans. It puts pressure on my waistband. That could likely be that everything's just kind of stuck together.
Yeah, and I felt like it was a temporary thing. It didn't feel like, oh, this is going to be forever. I felt like it was a healing thing.
Yeah. And it can take years, but if you do this, it's going to speed it up.
Okay.
Absolutely. So the only contraindications, I realize that the reason you asked that question is to know if you should or shouldn't do this and whether it will help. The only times that you shouldn't do this is if you have an active infection. So, we'll use a bowel or colon infection just as an example because those are common. So you've got runny diarrhea, you've perhaps got a little norovirus, something's going on in there, there's obviously inflammation, cramping. Don't do it right then. Wait until you're not pooping water. Wait until, I do it on myself no matter what because I know when to stop, but just use that as a guideline. When you've got an active infection, let your body do its thing. You have strep throat and you've got spots on the back of your throat, you got strep throat, and you're not sure if you should do it. Wait a minute. Let it calm down a little bit. Let your body do its thing where it's at, and then go in there and do it.
So if you had strep throat, just for example, if you had strep throat and you did that, would that move infection throughout your body?
It can.
Okay.
I have a daughter. My daughter, with her issues, she gets strep all the time. I do lymph on her. I do lymph drainage on her all the time when she has strep. Because she's had it so many times, she's familiar with how it works in her body. But I tell you that it can, and to be careful, because until you're familiar with how your body responds to doing drainage yourself, just go err on the side of caution.
Yeah. Right.
So we don't want to be doing lymph drainage when there's internal bleeding. If you have blood in your poop, don't do the descending colon and the Ileocecal valve and the pylorus. By all means, if you've got indigestion or you're throwing up because you had too much tequila on the 4th of July, whatever, knock yourself out. Do lymphatic drainage. You're not going to hurt yourself.
Thank you for answering that.
Yeah. And then if you have congestive heart failure. That would be another thing. I'll tell you what, in this time of Corona, I'm doing lymph drain. My whole family is doing lymph drainage all the time, just to keep our lymph system moving, so that if we get it, we're already in higher gear. You know, our lymph system's already working in a higher gear. It's like if you got to run away from a pterodactyl and you haven't ran in 6 months, you're probably not going to run very fast. But you know, if you're used to running, you're going to have a better chance of getting away from the pterodactyl. Is kind of how I feel with doing lymph drainage on a regular basis.
So is that saying you're helping your immune system then?
Yes.
Absolutely. I feel like it's helping my immune system just be faster to respond and stronger. And I mean, for anything, I like I said, I took a terrible fall, fractured my clavicle, had a hematoma in my breast, and I used my imaging, my infrared camera, to check the hematoma regularly. And I've honestly never seen an injury like that heal so fast. My friend's a surgeon and was just blown away and said, I do not know how you healed that fast. And I was doing lymph drainage an hour a day. So I got the fluid moving through there. I got everything, all my body's ability to heal like was in high gear because I was helping it with this lymph drainage.
Yeah, thank you.
So, yeah, so, you know, and honestly, you guys have my information that Katie sent you that. If you have a situation that occurs where you're like, should I do lymph drainage right now? You can email me and ask me, or call me or text me and ask me, and I'll give you my best opinion. You know, I've been doing this for a lot of years, and my feeling is that once you start doing this, once you start familiarizing yourself with this, you're going to know if it feels right or not. You know, like if you want to go for a walk, you know that, you know, oh, my lungs are killing me right now. I don't really want to go for a vigorous walk uphill. My body doesn't want that right now. You know these things about your body, so you'll start to get more familiar with this as well.
Yeah.
So that said, the last thing I really want to address on the belly, I'm going to have to change my position because I'm going to have to show you what's up on me. We'll see if I can do this. Okay. We got this. You can see me, right? All right, here we go. Belly button. That was the pylorus and the ileocecal valve are on the right side. The left side is where your descending colon is. So there's my belly button.
Oh.
There's my descending colon, right on the side. This is my bone. My hand is in front of my bone. This is the descending colon, right next to my belly button on the left side. So our food comes into our stomach, goes down to the pylorus, comes down and sweeps down into here, into this area. Small intestines all over the place, comes back up to the ileocecal valve area. And then the colon, for most of us, sometimes it changes when we've had surgery, but the colon is ascending, transverse, sigmoid, and descending colon, and then out. So this right here is your descending colon. So the motion I'm making, this is exaggerated. I don't make this giant motion. This is the motion that you're making. Back of my pinky finger is in front of my bone right here. So this is our digestive system goes from our mouth to our anus, right? This is the end of the line right here. And half of our lymph is from here to your pubic bone in your gut. There's gut-associated lymphatic tissue, mucosal-associated lymphatic tissue. So trying to help this along a little bit, this is the motion, descending colon area. This, you guys, honestly, if you ever have to take pain meds and they constipate you, this is the reason people call me and tell me they took the best poop in their life, is because this area here, we need to have that fluid moving. We need to have that lymphatic fluid moistening the tissue and moving everything through. And so if you're in there with your hand helping to move it, you're going to speed that up a lot. So I'm going to show you guys one more thing while I'm standing up. That is your right above the, well, I'm going to stand up again now and show you. I wish I had pants on. I have a skirt on, so we're going to do the best we can. There's the crease in my leg. I'm putting my pinky, my hand, right where my leg meets my abdomen. So right there. Pubic bone, crease. Pubic bone, crease. Everything under my hands right here is lymph. This is all lymph. And that is the only place. So everything drains to your heart except this area right here. This is the bone. This is the crease. So I'm on top of the bone, above the bone, in this area. And most of us, this is pretty tender. Like this is not, it's, you don't want to go very deep. So it's pretty easy to know how much pressure to use here. Instead of going straight up to the heart, it's going to go straight to the center. The reason is that vessel that I showed you, that lymphatic vessel that sits on the front of your spine that comes all the way up to your heart, starts right here. And it's coming up and it's deep inside your body in front of your spine. So we're massaging this part of the lymph to sort of help it go towards the midline. You can also get in this area. So I had ovarian cancer. This was my leg that was really full. So this area here would have lymph nodes that were ridiculously huge. There were times I couldn't wear underwear because my lymph nodes were so big here and so painful. And I see this all the time with my clients. Little tiny circles and sort of guiding it towards the center. It's going to go towards the center, and then it's going to go deep, and then it's going to come up and go where it's supposed to. Then on your leg, so here's the crease, here's my leg, on the inside of your thigh. And again, I wish I had worn pants. On the inside of your thigh, straight up to meet the torso. So all of the inside of your thigh, this is it doesn't matter who, this is going to help your bladder, this is going to help your descending colon, this is going to help your pelvic floor, this is going to help your legs. Anybody who has varicose veins, anybody who has any puffiness in their feet or their legs, straight up the inside of your thigh, and then this stuff straight towards the middle. And if you find a node in there that feels larger or tender, same thing as with the rest of the body, little circles on it. And
How much pressure?
so again, this is, imagine that you're massaging a newborn baby. You are
Okay.
not using, and if you have swollen lymph nodes, trust me, you're not going to, I mean, if you have a tender swollen lymph node, there are honestly times where my finger touching on, just setting on it, just like a nickel weight is uncomfortable. So
Okay.
there might be times where you have, or areas of your body where you're just setting your hand on it and slowly moving it. And it's so cool when you actually, so we get this lymph node that's full of fluid. The fluid's not moving. It's kind of gummy. It's like full of dead cells, and it's full of chemo crap that's hanging out in your body, and it's full of whatever the, you know, pizza you ate and, you know, whatever. So it's all gummed up in your lymph node and it's trying to get out, and you put some pressure and you start to massage that node. When the fluid leaves and moves along on the path, the lymph node sort of collapses. It's going to fill up again. It's its job to fill up again. It's going to fill up again. But when you feel it collapse, it might be just like a balloon that runs out of air, or it might be that you're working on it and then you're like, oh, I can't find it. Where did it go? Well, and that means it emptied out, which is what we want. So again, they really encourage you to find the spots that are clear, or that you feel a lymph node where you go, I think this might be one of the, I'm going to see what happens if I mess with it for a while. And if it starts to get aggravated, stop. And if you have a lymph node, I just got, for the first time in my life, on my thigh, ingrown hair that got super infected, and it was on my upper thigh, and all of my pelvic lymph nodes swelled. And me, I'm like, I'm curious. I love being a guinea pig. Anytime I have some weird thing, I try to experiment with it and see what works. So I would drain the lymph and it would fill right back up again. And this thing was really tender. And I was putting stuff on it to make it go away or whatever. But it was a good 4 or 5 inches away from my lymph nodes, and they were responding dramatically. So sometimes when we find swollen lymph nodes, just think, oh, where's this coming? It's not going to just swell on its own. There's something going on. So I urge you to find the areas in your body. If it's an armpit and you find a lymph node, work it, see how you can affect it, and where is it coming from? What's causing this to be full? Is there something blocking through here, like a scar from a surgery? If you find a lymph node in here that's tender, what's blocking it? If it's tender here, maybe it's because the armpit's actually where the fluid's not moving through. And this is like a you know, backed up kitchen sink. It just has no place to go. And back down to the pelvis and the gut, like just start to really familiarize yourself with what it feels like when it's normal and not uncomfortable and what the source could be. And again, look at pictures, learn a little bit about the anatomy and also how it applies to your own personal body and your own surgery.
Okay, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So I had a mastectomy of my left breast, and I have lymphedema in my left arm, but I tend to retain fluid around my back.
Oh yeah, okay. Did they take out lymph nodes?
Yes.
Okay, so the reason you retain fluid around your back is because these lymph nodes are gone and our body does really super cool things and it finds a different pathway. So it's trying to come around your back and go here. So it's,
Okay.
the fluid is, its normal pathway used to be like just straight, you know, now it has to take some weird back road, and it's not like the back road's all overgrown with blackberries and, you know, boulders that fell off the side of the hill. So it's not going quite right. So literally the second pathway it's going to take is over your shoulder and up to your chest. I'm going to show you a cool trick since we're here and I can do it. Hang on. I have a sarong here, which is just what's handy for me. You can use a towel, you can use a scarf, you can use a sweatshirt, whatever. In a situation like this for you and anybody else that might have that situation, okay, the lymph normally would go straight up like this, but yours is not. So you take something, in my case, this sarong, and what I'm doing is I'm helping guide it over the top. So you take this, you hold it nice and secure, and you just pull that fluid up over the top, and you do it over. And I learned this actually, I suggested something similar to a client who went home and did this, and she said it made all the difference in the world. And this is all she did. Pull it over. So I'm actually giving it a good tug and slowly letting this go. So I'm pulling the skin. I'm not hurting myself, but I'm pulling my skin, which is then pulling the vessels and helping that fluid come up over the top where it can come in right here. And for anybody who ends up with back congestion like that, that can happen with lung stuff, with anything that's all blocked up in here.
Mm-hmm.
Or back can get fluid back there. That's the little trick to move it through there.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Kimby,
Yeah.
sorry, you were in the middle of something. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I want to show you guys dry brushing, and then I want to just have you ask whatever other questions you have.
Okay, perfect. I know how much information that is in your brain.
Yeah.
No, I don't know, but I know that you are always so happy to share. And so I wanted to let you know that it's 8:10
Thank you.
now. So
Okay. So let me show you dry brushing. It's just going to take us like 2 minutes. Dry brushing is awesome. This dry brush, because my leg had lymphedema, you can see it's not super hard. It's just literally a dry brush. Long handle one. They have little tiny cool ones at Fred Meyer. I found one the other day for $6 for your face. Perfect for the breast. It's not here, or I would show you, but they have them literally little tiny round facial brushes, and you'll do the breast like this. But dry brushing, the concept is exactly how it sounds. Your skin is dry, the brush is dry, and when I run this over my skin, I'm stimulating all of those lymphatic vessels that are like sea anemones. Think about when you're in the ocean, and there's little sea anemones with their little, whatever those thingies are called, floating under the water. When you touch them, they close, right? But our lymph vessels, they open and close when you touch them. So they open, they close, they open. And what that's doing is, since we're the end of the lymph vessel is what's pulling in the extra fluid, that opening and closing is pumping that fluid and pulling it into the system and helping it move out of the surrounding tissue. So when you take the dry brush, I told someone to dry brush recently, and I was so unclear. I just said, oh yeah, just run the dry brush over your skin. And so she said, she calls me, she goes, it hurts so bad. She goes, my skin's all red and scratched. Don't do that. I didn't tell her to run it lightly over her skin. So you're running it lightly over your skin. You do not want your skin to be red. You do not want to scratch your skin. You're trying to stimulate those vessels to open and close. Breast cancer, you're going to start way down here on your fingertips, and you're going to do your whole hand. And you're only stroking up. So you're guiding the fluid up to where it can end at the terminus up by your clavicles. So only stroking up. And for whoever it was who mentioned their back, over the back. And you're not going to go over closed. You're going to do this on your skin. And then with the legs, you're straight up, toes all the way up. And the spot that I told you on our bellies that drains down towards the pubic bone, what the dry brush is doing is it's draining the more superficial lymph closer to the surface. What we were doing with our hands is draining the deeper lymph. So when you run the dry brush over your torso, you go just straight up. That's all straight up until you're going to go around the breast, but you're going to go straight up. So this, I just had it sitting next to my toilet, and since I had to pee several times a day, when I was sitting there, I would just drain my leg. I mean, I would just dry brush my leg while it was just how I made myself remember to dry brush when I really needed it, when my leg was experiencing a lot of lymphedema. People ask before or after shower, you know, I've never heard that it really matters, but it should feel good, and you should feel really stimulated afterwards. My arm is like all alive right now, and it should never feel bad. It should feel good. So really just get yourself, I think, like this is probably one, I used to carry them at my office, and you can get them online for $5. I was going to say go to Bed Bath & Beyond, but who knows how long we'll be from Bed Bath & Beyond. They have for like $10 there, so you can get them online, but I would get one with a long handle.
How many times do you go up your arm and up your
As long
leg?
as you want, like literally as long as you want. Like I honestly, when I would have this on my wall in my bathroom, every single time I went and sat down, I would just, you know, what is that, a minute, 2 minutes, I would sit there and drain my leg, and I would do it several times a day.
That is way longer than I have to go for. No, I'm just kidding.
So you're going slow and you're going gently, and you can just, you'll feel, once it starts to irritate your skin, you're done. You don't want it to irritate your skin.
Yeah.
Just
Somebody asks, can they dry brush, did you say dry brush around or on the breast, or both?
So the breast is from the nipple out, like the sun's rays, like this. So you can, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is huge, so it's not really a breast brush, but those little ones that I found at Fred Meyer last week, perfect, $6.
And it's called a facial.
And if somebody had radiation, is it fine to still dry brush their breast?
Yeah, you know, it doesn't feel as good because for
The
people
nerve.
with radiation either frequently have neuropathy or sensitivity. But yes, absolutely. If you've had radiation, 100% dry brush. It helps stimulate those vessels to open and close. And it also just helps to not let that adhesion and scar tissue really get a good solid bed. You don't want it deep in there. Dry brush questions. Nope.
So Kimby,
What was the last thing? What were we going to do after the dry brush, Katie?
we're gonna do questions.
Oh, well, there you go.
I was thinking, first up, I want to say thank you so much for doing this class. I know everybody wanted, of course, do it in person just because it's just.
Oh, wait. Before I forget, I want to show 2 products.
Okay.
I don't know these people. I get nothing for telling you about these products. I just use them myself, so there's no kickbacks for me. There are lymphatic formulas that are tincture formulas that I have found to be so helpful sometimes when my lymph is really congested. This is just from Terra Firma, a local company. It's a lymph formula. There's probably 100 different lymph formulas out there. For some folks, this is really helpful. But this stuff, they have at Market of Choice and Bimart, this total body wellness stuff. On the label, it used to say it was for lymphatic congestion also. I think that legally they can't say that anymore. I love this stuff. for increasing lymphatic flow. So those are the two products that I recommend for people, is an oral tincture if that's something that's a continued problem, and then this topically.
So question on that, do you know what the pH level is on the lotion? Because I was told with lymphedema, you should use a lower pH.
Oh boy. You know, I need new glasses and my optometrist is closed, so I can't tell you.
Okay. Well, I can look at Bimart.
Yeah, you can. I mean, this one still says promotes lymphatic system wellness.
Okay.
But yeah, I can't read the pH if it's on there because.
What was it called again? Total body?
So Bimart or market of choice, it's called Total Body Wellness.
Oh,
And it's called,
Mhm.
let me see if I have their information. RE Balance. Oh, it's, okay, here it says contact, here's the website. www.tropiceel, TROPICEEL.com.
Okay.
And they're Roseburg.
Oh.
So they're local folks. Well, you know, local-ish, but love this stuff. Been using it for years, and I bet that their website will tell you the pH.
can I ask that bigger brush, the one that you were using, is that like a shower brush?
Yes.
Or what is that? What it is? A shower brush?
This plastic one, I probably bought this at like Rite Aid for $5. And this is just a plastic. This one's really soft, and I would use that. I would use the softest one you can find if you had radiation or if you have a bunch of external scar tissue. But if we were in person, I would show you the scar on my belly. You won't be able to see it with the lighting in here. But when I had my cancer surgery, I had my incision from my belly button to my pubic bone, and I scarred up pretty decent scar. It was pretty thick and it keloided. The only part of my scar that doesn't look like a scar, you can't even see the scar, is where my pants sat. And I was really thin at the time, but my jeans would rub on and even my underwear, whatever I wore, would rub on my scar. So I had a scar, you know, this long, where right where my pants sat was rubbing constantly. And there's no, I mean, you can't see the scar. It's the constant rubbing, the massage, the circulation in that scar healed it. And the rest of the scar it's fine. I've worked it, but it's very, very, very different than the area that was touched all the time.
Yeah.
So questions?
Well, I was thinking, first off, thank you again. And, but I was thinking we could open up the cameras just because sometimes it's easier. And
That'd be great.
If you're tired of looking at yourself, and I'm going to turn on off the recording as well. So